Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Spiritual Underground Podcast. We're sitting here at the kitchen table at the DTM Enterprises today. Need a good Wi-Fi signal today, and the wood shop just doesn't quite cut it out there. Although Tony, our guest today, Tony had mentioned getting a repeater that I can send it out there better. But today we're around the kitchen table because we have three guests. We're doing something new today. We have one online remote guest. The Colonel is online. Say hi, Colonel.
Hey, everybody.
And Tony is sitting here beside me. We had some technical difficulties trying to get this thing to work this morning, and I think we've got it what I call good enough to do what we're doing today. I'll learn some more about that later on. DTMWW.net. That's my wood shop, my handyman services. If you're in the Louisville metro area, you can contact me there, or Dan at DTMWW.net. If you go to that website, you can also find my contact information and call me. Go to Amazon and get 12 Steps Spiritual Recovery. It is a book by James Christopher Cohn. We've got local meetings popping up. We've just added a new women's meeting here in the Louisville area. It's on 7:30 on Tuesday nights. If you're interested in that, Women's 12-Step Spiritual Recovery meeting, that's the fourth meeting, local meeting here in the area that has started up. You can contact me and I'll give you more information on that. And you can get the book at Amazon, 12-Step Spiritual Recovery by James Christopher Cohn. It is the master's version, the great compendium, the magnum opus of the 12 steps. And the music rack around here today, I think I will put Jim's music back on the front end of these primarily nicotine quitting podcasts. I've settled on a couple different things. So Jim here, the Colonel, will get the musical credit for today.
Awesome.
And so, real cool stuff here. I'll just kind of go back. I like to give a little background. In 2017, matter of fact, I'm going to, in 3 days, Thursday, I will hit my 2-year mark of being completely 100% nicotine free. And so 2 years ago, Jim and I bumped into each other on a website that was primarily focused on helping people quit dipping smokeless tobacco. And we ran into one another there, and Tony at that time had expressed some interest about wanting to quit also. So he joined us for a period of time. I'm not going to get real heavy into that story. We'll get into it as we go along. And so we bumped into that, and as we do with these things, some people stick around and keep at it, and the addictions are strong, and it's not, people that just up and quit the first time they try is a very rare thing on any account, no matter if it's dope, booze, nicotine, overeating, whatever it is, it's your vice. It's tough to quit, and rarely does somebody do it the very first try. So Jim and I always say that. I say Jim and I. It sounds like I'm saying the astrological thing, Jim and I. I've said that once on my voice to text on my phone, and it come out GEMINI. Jim and I are still tracking down through here. Last week, or what was it? Last Thursday, right? Was your
actually last Tuesday.
Last Tuesday was your 2-year. Kind of funny because we count days around here, and it's hard to, especially that first one's pretty easy to see, but the second one's a little tougher. I know that 731 mark, right, is the 2-year mark.
It threw me.
Yeah, and then when we had a friend the other day posted, and I'm glad he reminded me that it was 5 years in days, because there's no way in hell I would have known that was 5 years. I wouldn't have, I'm not sitting around taking people's day counts and dividing it by 365 to see if it comes out an even number.
No, I'm bound to miss my 3-year.
Yeah, I know mine is October 17th, and so
aside from date, but day count, forget about it.
Yeah, and I don't, and I don't know. My phone's only got room for one person's birthday. Maybe I'll change. Most of the people's birthdays in my phone are their sobriety dates. So, like it says, so and so's turning 3 today, and he's a 45-year-old man. But anyway, to circle back around to where I landed there, we started this nicotine journey some years ago, and the big milestone in it is a 100 days. I like that we celebrate zeros, so like even 10 is a celebration, and 20 and 30, and then 100 is really the big You're never out of the woods, but I'm going to use that. It's kind of an out of the woods thing. You've made it 100 days, and there is some science to that 90-day mark that tells us that once you've gotten 90 days down the road on giving up a behavior or a substance, that is a milestone that is like biological. Your body has gotten it completely out, and your mind should not be obsessing about it at the level that it used to. And so we're here to celebrate today Tony's 100 days nicotine free. And when we say that around here, we don't mean chewing gum, we don't mean doing patches, and we don't mean having lozenges. This is 100% nicotine free. Not quit smoking, not quit vaping, not quit dipping. 100% nicotine free lifestyle. And it's quite an accomplishment, man. It is tough to do. Ask anybody who's done it. So today we're coming around here, and I'll be plain and simple about this too. I don't know too many men that know more about nicotine quitting than Jim here, the Colonel. So I like having his. He's kind of my co-pilot, my co-host here. When I'm doing this nicotine quitting stuff, I always pick up something off of what he asks and talks. And quite frankly, I'm not sure I'm totally qualified to do a nicotine quitting podcast without your help. So thanks for joining me. I don't want those noises. Could you hear that? How can I get rid of that? Man, I'm afraid if I do that, it'll speak for a minute, Jim.
Well,
yeah,
100 days though. 100 days.
All right. Yeah, I did. When I silenced my alarm on this thing, it also silenced my speakers. We'll just have to roll with it and see what happens, and hopefully I won't get too many of them. I'm not sure what to do about it.
Was that an email?
I just closed my email. No, these are pop-ups out of the damn Google Chrome. They keep on telling me so-and-so's podcasts and this and that, and different things are going on. And
Oh, the notification type crap.
and I can't get them turned off. I've tried a number of times. Dad struggles with it too, and this is completely unrelated to the podcast, but we're sitting around shooting the shit, and that's what we do here around this thing. Dad has struggles with it too, and I cannot get the damn thing to stop doing it. I just lived with it. Anyway, we'll live with it today too. So, where do you think we ought to start?
Well, I want to hear about Tony's renewed decision to quit. Basically pick it up from 100 days ago.
Yeah. Well, let's start there. What made you decide all of a sudden that, and I don't know if it's all of a sudden, but suddenly you decided once again that you were going to put down the nicotine and make another run at getting that substance out of your life?
Yet again. First off, how's everybody doing today? Tony, I guess I got 103 days quit today, but we're celebrating the 100th. I don't really know. I think a combination of having a 2-year-old and just trying to grow, trying to do better things, put better things in my body, keep the bad stuff out, just continuing to grow down a spiritual path, I think led me to realize that I can't use nicotine socially or as I want to. Just on certain days, it was definitely an addiction for me. So I couldn't tell you how many times I've actually tried to quit. There was one time I had about 5 years quit. So it was, I guess I just kept trying. And then this time was the first time I've tried, and I've actually had a support group behind me. It wasn't just me doing my own thing, or me using drugs, or me using vape, or using fake snuff or anything like that. So it was definitely a different way of trying to quit for me.
So the biggest difference, in your opinion, between this time and the time that we all met 2 years ago, what would you say the biggest difference in your resolve is this time?
Well, I definitely was more serious about it. Before, it was more of a curiosity. So I think that reading up on things and looking at statistics, and I've had different experiences throughout my life where people kind of would tell me that dipping's worse than smoking for your body, and taking it in, getting it directly into your blood versus having it filtered through your lungs before it goes into your bloodstream and things of that nature. So it was kind of, I've been a smoker too, cigars and cigarettes and pipe and pretty much anything you could do. But
you had all the delivery systems.
Yeah, you can't, why just limit yourself to one when there's so many options?
Oh, absolutely. And they all are tailor-made to certain social environments.
Right.
You can't smoke in a government building, but, put a dip in when you're sitting on the toilet and you're good to go, right?
And that's one thing I thought when I was working, because I primarily worked in an office, and, you don't want to be stepping outside every hour, so you throw in a dip and you can continue to be productive and not take breaks, and next thing you know, you're the star employee and you still get your fix. So the best of both worlds.
The wonderful lies that we told ourselves.
Right.
I'm so much more productive with a dip in my mouth, I guarantee you.
I actually know a guy right now that's a close friend of mine who has added dipping to his repertoire of smoking, and that is one of the reasons is from a time-saving standpoint that he doesn't have to step outside. So he's
great justification.
Yeah, he started dipping. It's interesting to watch the nicotine addiction and how it works in concert with people in recovery. I don't know how, we recognize pretty plainly that other stuff wasn't working for us, but we continue to use other things. And that's pretty common. I'm certainly not knocking in that guy. Listen to this. That is not a dig on that guy at all. I understand, and I see it. It took me, I was a couple years sober before the nicotine was something that I was willing to look at. Now, I do remember one thing, and that's a funny thing about being on this, and I don't know if it's my memory or if it is that good. I do have this thing with names and faces, and I remember names and faces, and I do remember something about 100 days ago, someplace in that neighborhood. Tony and I were in a meeting, and he walked up to me and said that he had listened to Jim's story on the podcast, and it had rekindled his thoughts on, I think maybe you were a few days down the pike or something. I can't really remember, but there was something to the fact that he was those two things collided together. So I would like to take note that the fact that Jim told his story on the podcast at least had some influence on Tony's decision to quit, and that goes along with this same thing, is that when we see these other people having success using some method to get where I want to go, like if you are walking a path and it's in the direction I want to go and you seem to be doing it in a happy and successful manner, that obviously makes that attractive to me, and I go, hey, I could probably walk that same path. So I'm gonna venture to say also that these success stories piled up on many times of failure to try to do it ourselves, try to do it. I tried it. I like the thing. I picked it up from somebody else. I could never ever stay quit. I just couldn't do it. Time and time again, I could never stay quit. But we seem to be able to. And until I got that we thing under my belt, I was unable to put the stuff down and stay off of it.
Yeah, that's a very, very important part of it, of course. But I also found that with all my attempts and failures, that the key tie-in to that is quitting. Really, honestly, just quitting for yourself. It's got to. You have to have the right reason. Quitting because your wife is threatening to divorce you, while a very important motivation. But it's not for you. You're not making the decision yourself. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that was the biggest difference between this time for me and the 100 other times I've tried to quit before, and earning myself the label of serial caver. But I just made up my mind this time, and it sounds like Tony, hat tip to you.
Tip over that way.
Well, thanks, Jim. Dan's trying to take a picture.
Yeah.
All right, we got a picture.
Photo op.
I'd say your story definitely. I related to certain things in your story, and I think that's what helped me when I was new to realize that you had some experience that would be good for me to pay attention to along my quit. So
I love hearing that.
Until we make that decision for ourselves, you're right, and it goes for all of this stuff, is that until I want to, or the flip side of that, as long as I don't want to quit for myself, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's just a vacation.
Yep. You just have some stoppages, have a sore mouth, decide I'm going to quit for a little bit. It gets better. I'm back to it. I have a particularly bad hangover. I decide I'm not going to drink today. And then I'm back to doing it again until something comes in to where I actually have gotten to where I really want to quit. It's not going to happen.
Then ultimately, if you're not quitting for yourself, you're going to do it long enough to get the heat off. If it's somebody else putting pressure on you, eventually they'll forget about it.
Yep.
Or you'll forget about the heat. One of the two.
Our friend Billy had the health scare, and that got his attention. I didn't have that. Mine was just on all of a sudden a huge hypocritical feeling of sitting next to a guy working 12-step work, talking about improving the quality of your life and putting down stuff that's bad for you and doing all this talk, and realizing I was spitting into a cup at the same time. And it just rang my bell, man. And the dude I was sitting with, he noticed that my bell just got rung, but he didn't know why, and I didn't tell him. But he did notice me stumble on my words, because I just all of a sudden just was like, I was speechless for a minute. I just went completely up inside my head going, you hypocrite. What are you saying when you're doing, you're saying one thing and doing something completely different? And I didn't let that person in on it, but it did. That was my point where, like, all of a sudden I'm ready to quit for me, because I could not play that part anymore.
Yeah, and in no way is it meant to sound, selfish, but when people ask me the major difference for this quit, I always say, this time it's my quit. Nobody else's, it's mine.
Yeah.
And it's this, maybe the selfish aspect is I'm finally taking care of myself. So
yeah, you have to take some, that goes into that. You must I say you must participate in your own recovery, and I say thank you for allowing me to participate in my recovery. The same thing, you got to participate in this quit for you, because that's the problem. That's the deal. If I'm not going to participate in it, if it's not really for me, it's going to be really hard to get me to participate in it.
So, Tony, this is kind of a burning question, because this is a long time ago for Dan and I. Tell us about some of the big milestones to get you to 100. Your toughest days, or what day was the biggest challenge? When did you feel the triggers were kind of backing off? Take it and run with it.
I think like the first week was pretty tough because you had the physical deal more so than the psychological deal. So you were actually coming off the nicotine. I think they say 72 hours for it to actually leave your body. But the psychological effects, of putting your hand to your mouth or spitting in a cup or, packing a can, whatever, stays with you longer than that. After the first week, it did tend to get a little easier. I guess I kind of got in the groove of post and row and maintaining accountability. And then probably around day 20, maybe between 20 and 30 was a little rough patch where I kind of, developed cravings, and, they were fleeting for the most part, but they came pretty hard. Especially if something wasn't going the way I thought it should, or I caught a curveball, whether it was at work or in a relationship. That would be where my mind went first, would be to old ways of thinking. And then it was pretty, after a week or so, talking with you guys, kind of sharing some stuff and shedding some light on some stuff, it got easier. And I guess the hardest part to where I got north towards 100 days was getting to the actual 100 days, because I had a little excitement of it, that I actually get to be to that level, again, and actually have people that I can celebrate with.
Those 2 milestones that you mentioned, actually you mentioned 3, and that's going from the physical to the psychological in that first week or so, and then the 20 to 30, and then, let's see, for Dan and I, it was usually in the mid-80s to early 90s. Those 3 areas hit us hard too. I'm not saying it's going to hit everybody, but it is a fairly, those are common milestones and challenges for most quitters.
It's funny, the day count thing, and when things end up being, there's obviously some pattern there because it's been established, but it's interesting that we do find that we land on these certain problem spots.
Yeah, and
my worst one I remember, and I don't mean to, I jumped right on top of you, so I'm sorry, but my worst I remember was someplace in that 32 days that I just I basically had a blackout that weekend, a rage blackout. I don't even remember some of the weekend.
I did not mention the rage. The rage is part of my story as well.
Well, let's go ahead, since it came up, and it really was a major event for Dan and us that supported him. So let's talk about the rage. It's frustration,
irritability.
Irritability. You want to have control, but you realize you don't have control. And these damn cravings don't go away. And the whole time the Nick bitch is whispering in our ears that, you don't need this group. You don't need all this drama. I'm right here. Come into my arms and, get your next fix. And yeah, that pissed me off. I was pretty much in the rage my first, almost my first year. But, that's why you guys... That's why I got the nicknames and the rep that I do, but
and it's completely contrary to my nature generally to have a short wick. I'm not a
short fuse.
Yeah, I'm not a quick to anger kind of guy typically, and I'm certainly not that as a recovered dude. As I could get that way pretty quick when I was on the dope and the booze, but now that that's out of my life, I really look at myself as a pretty calm dude. And man, when I started put down that nicotine, that changed, and I was seeing a piece of myself. In the Mankind Project, this thing I'm doing, we talk a lot about Jung's shadow, the shadow that's like behind you. I started seeing my shadow in that anger and that rage that would come about so quickly on just the drop of a hat, and what's interesting is that the very people who were supposedly trying to help me quit were some of the ones that were the quickest to light my fuse.
Yeah.
It wasn't happening, here at home that often. It was actually the specific people who were supposedly trying to help me. Another thing I'd like to talk about too is as we get up into this 100, did you feel like as you were coming to that milestone, do you feel a level of freedom that you didn't feel before?
I do, yeah, definitely. I gotta, tread lightly on that, because I don't want to think that I got this, because, like I said before, one time I had about 5 years, and it was, 100 days compared to 5 years time-wise isn't very much. So
you were nicotine free for 5 years?
Yes.
No, nothing.
Nothing.
And just on your own.
Yeah. And I had to quit dipping and smoking before I went in the military, and then after I got out of basic, they had fake snuff at the PX, so I ended up buying real stuff and putting it in a fake pouch, and I was smart.
Oh, so, yeah?
Yeah, I started, dipping while I was in tech school when it was illegal to dip, and, I'm telling on myself, but whatever.
Well, they're not going to hunt you down.
Not for that, you don't think?
Nah.
But, Yeah, and you know, I quit for a few months, and I'm on my own. But then I, you know, realized that I had this, and I've quit before. Why can't I quit again? Kind of deal. The kind of way of thinking you get into, and really, I mean, quitting nicotine is a bitch. It really is, and once it's got a hold of you, it's tough. And I've quit smoking and I've quit dipping, and I gotta say the physical dependency of dipping is greater than smoking, in my opinion. They're both hard to quit, but when you quit dipping, you just feel like shit, like your body. You go through withdrawals, and I think those withdrawals are harsher than smoking physically, in my experience with it. So
I certainly feel that way, but I'm not sure I have any real basis for it. I've read some things that talks about the way that we get, like with a dip, I can get that like almost all day long delivery. Or with a cigarette, unless I'm in a position, even if you are in a position where you could smoke at will, you just can't smoke one. You know, it's just pretty damn tough to smoke one cigarette after the other, after the other, after the other.
Yeah, then you get that really nasty headache, and
yeah, but you can.
but you can dip like hell
on in from morning to night almost. You know, I mean, there's times that I do that. It matters what my environment is, but you know, if I'm hunting, if I'm out in the woods, doing that kind of stuff where I can just dip at will, you know, there's very few moments in a day. You know, I'm spitting out a dip and putting a new one in right now just to refresh.
Yeah, I think what this boils down to is we're talking about the same chemicals, but because the delivery, and Tony mentioned it earlier, that it goes straight into the bloodstream because the oral membranes are so porous, and it's like mainlining heroin. I mean, because it's right in the bloodstream. You know, you take that first puff of a cigarette, and it might take a while to get get that first buzz. But you put a dip in, and your eyes just kind of go buggy right then, because you just got it.
Yep. Yeah.
So I agree that because of the dipping aspect, it is much harder because it's more socially, well, I won't say accepted, but it's easily hidden.
Yeah.
Especially if you're going to swallow.
Yeah, you can camouflage it pretty well, and you know it's like socially acceptable, man. I've had some people in my life here recently, man, that have like nearly, frankly, they've told me they probably wouldn't be hanging out with me if I was still dipping, because it's so gross.
It's only gross if they see it.
Yeah, well, the gals do not like
or if they
dippers. It is gross, you know. When I watch people doing it now, man, I'm a little bit like, I don't know. There's something, you know, when I see those bottles people carrying around, and I can see all that brown juice in that bottle, man. That is, you know, like you said, if you're swallowing it and nobody knows you're really doing it, that's one thing. Plus, if you're not like putting in this big dip that people can see, you know, I bumped into a guy the other day and he had a big old front lip dip. I never dipped in my front lip, you know. I always carried mine around the side of my jaw, down in my lower cheek. And as long as I kept it a manageable size, you didn't really notice that it was there.
Yeah, you could pack it down real good. And that was the best thing about Copenhagen. Not romanticizing about this crap, but you know, Copenhagen was easier to hide as long as you could manage the fine grain, you know, the way it would float around in your mouth.
Yeah, I couldn't.
Well, it made me sick the first couple times I tried it because I couldn't manage the floaters and, you know, gag, puke, and anyway.
So, how'd you start? What was your earliest nicotine use? What do you recall, like how you ended up beginning to start using nicotine in whenever that was?
I do. I forget. It was like elementary school. I made a decision on a school bus, and I said, my parents smoked, and they smoked all their life, and I was very against it. And I would voice my opinions on it and be like, you need to quit smoking. That shit can kill you, basically. And I don't know why my brain thought this was a good idea, but I said, you know, you're going to quit smoking or I'm going to start smoking. And I was like fucking 10 years old or something, 9 years old, I don't know. And I was probably 11 or 12 before I actually smoked a cigarette. And I say smoked before I Bill Clintoned a cigarette.
But hey, we've all done that.
Yeah, and and then it just kind of started from there. It just, I got a little bit in me, and I kind of got a little curious, and I wanted a little more. And then before I knew it, I was dependent on it, and if I didn't have it, that I could physically feel it. So I really didn't start smoking then. It was more on and off kind of experimental thing, but that's what kind of kicked it off. And when I was like 15, a buddy in high school offered me a dip, and he was kind of like, "Oh, here, try this," and he wanted me to puke, and because most people that did dip for the first time puked, and I threw one in, and it was like skull cherry. Oh my god!
Oh, the candy.
Yeah, horrible, like 1,000 cherries in a can. But I threw it in and didn't puke, and kind of liked it, and then it kind of started from there. We'd go to his family's house on the weekends, and we were young, and we'd grab a fifth, and we'd grab a couple cans, and we'd dip and drink, and that was kind of what we did, and so.
So at the end, before you quit for good, one day at a time, by the way, how bad was your habit? How many cigarettes or how many cans? What level had you reached?
When I was smoking, which I haven't smoked for probably three and a half years, I was smoking about a pack a day unless I was drinking. If it was a weekend or if I was drinking, it'd be about a pack and a half. And I typically dipped about a can a day. And then I would do those together some days when I was doing both addictions, and sometimes they'd be separate. But it was about a can a day and about a pack a day.
Wow. Yeah, that's some insane stuff. I could remember having a dip in and smoking a cigarette at the same time when I was drinking.
I remember the headache.
Yeah, I don't recall the headache on it. But I remember not, having a dip in and actually smoking a cigarette on top of that. Craziness, man. It's interesting that. So what made you stop? You said you stopped smoking, right? First.
Well.
Did you switch? Did you transition to dipping, or were you doing both?
I transitioned because I would go back and forth. So I would use, like the top of the can says, just a little water, please. Like the top of the can says, this is not a safe alternative to cigarettes. Well, I have a problem understanding truth sometimes, so I would use dip to quit smoking. And that's actually the first time I quit smoking. That's what I did. I used dip and tapered off the cigarettes, and then I eventually tapered off the dip. But as I started dipping more, the dip became harder to quit than the smoking was, because I'd kind of go back and forth some. So
what made you stop smoking?
I think I hate the cold weather, so I wanted to smoke inside. So that was another convenience of dip. I could do it wherever I was and not have to worry about running out of the house to smoke or out of the office to smoke.
So nobody was on you about doing that?
Oh yeah. We should remote my wife into this, and she could.
I'm gonna say because I have a hard time believing personally, and I might be a little bit okay, but that just simply not wanting to go outside would be enough for somebody to stop.
No, that's not the only reason, but that's one. Definitely hate the code. So the convenience factor of that. Cigarettes price increased. That was another factor, and dipping was definitely cheaper.
Yeah, I wonder about that. Is it?
It is. It depends on what you dip, I'd say.
And I also think probably where you're buying it.
True.
Was I know that I stopped in the last little convenience store on the way down to the cabin the other day. I stopped there. I used to always make sure in there, got all their product right there. And I saw the guy buy. What caught my attention was the guy said he wanted. And it's kind of funny because I just listened to the way he did. He goes, "Anything else?" And he said, "Yeah, give me a I don't know, almost an afterthought." He said, "Yeah, give me a pack of Marlboros." And the girl started heading for it, and he goes, "Make that two." And that make it two caught my attention. I was like, "Yeah, I get that."
Just give me a carton.
Yeah. And but I looked up there, and they were damn near $7 a pack. On the wall, and I thought, dang, and he was smoking the premiums, the Marlboro Reds, but I looked over at the dip, and it was about $3.50 was the big stickers, and I'm not gonna one thing I didn't want to do is start doing a real down and dirty price check. That'd just leave me in bad places. But I did look at the big sign that was on the hanging there and how much it was, and I I don't know. It seemed like I used to always buy it in a 5-pack, the rolls, and it seemed like a roll would last me about 3 days. So I was doing somewhere upwards of 1 can a day myself.
Remember in the old days they used to do the big logs, the 10-can logs?
Yep, I do remember that.
God, I can't believe I used to buy it like that.
It's kind of like the dog food in the cereal boxes. It's the same price, but not as much content in the package. So it's still, I don't know. I think when I quit, I'm still getting at this little store down the road at the rolls. I was getting a roll of Grizzly Long Cut Straight, which is kind of the budget stuff. I was getting that for someplace around $15 for a roll. So someplace around $3 a can. So, on the times that you tried, so I want to talk a little bit about the like the cycles of trying to quit. Do you recall any of this, like times in your life that you said, okay, man, I got to stop this, and I'm gonna put it down for good now, and then didn't, obviously wasn't able to do that? Can you share on any of those experiences of that time, those kind of times?
One thing that comes to mind was when I was in the military, I briefly smoked menthols, and I woke up one morning and coughed up and spit up some blood. I have allergy issues, so there's no telling if that was like sinus issues or actually from smoking, like something from the lung or from the throat. But I made a decision, and I guess you'd say took an oath to quit at that time. And I quit smoking for a few days, but I ended up switching from menthols back to regulars. I was a Marlboro Light smoker before they started distinguishing between lights and reds and all that. You can't say that anymore, right? Because there's no light cigarette.
Really?
That's what they say a few years ago. So,
wow.
Now it's the gold pack and the red pack.
Oh, really? So they do them by colors?
Yeah.
I saw somebody the other day. I was at another store like Kroger's, and I was doing something I can't remember. I didn't give them my coupons and had to go up to the customer service, and there was somebody trying to buy cigarettes, man, and it was a wrestling match because they was calling colors, and I don't think the person behind it might have been colorblind or something, and they really had trouble getting the right pack of cigarettes to this individual.
Well, I can't even look across the counter anymore. So
because,
it still makes me nervous.
Does it? That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, I want to know why.
I'm afraid if I pay too much attention to it, that I'll be that guy going, yeah, I want one of those pieces of pizza, and oh, by the way, 2 packs of Marlboro Lights.
Yeah.
What's funny is I was on the way here, and I grabbed a couple of energy drinks from the gas station down the road, and they ask you that, I think intentionally, as you come to the counter, anything else for you? Just as like a, it's almost like a trigger where, oh yeah, let me get, some lottery tickets, let me get some nicotine,
Yeah, all the impulse buys.
Right. You got any candy? Is any candy on special? Fill up the bag.
So I that's why I just probably count the number of trips to a convenience store in the last 2 years, probably no more than a dozen. I just won't go. And there's really nothing that they sell there that I can't get at a grocery store.
Yeah. Yep.
That was something that I guess early in my quit I had an issue with was I would notice the signs, and this was both for drinking and for smoking because they do advertise that on the outside of gas stations and signs down the road on the outside of liquor stores and everything else. Was it was hard for me to go into the gas station early on in my quit, and I wasn't. Luckily, I didn't really have to because I used my credit card at the pump most of the time and just stay outside. But they advertise out there at the pump too, so they want you to come in, and spend your money.
It's I'm not going to say there should be a law against it, but it is pretty brutal for anybody wanting to try to eliminate nicotine. It's tough. It's right there in your face everywhere you go.
Amen. Yeah, it is right there all the time.
It has definitely slowed down than what it used to be because I remember commercials on TV. Now there's still ads in magazines and there's still advertisements at the store. Definitely some hunting. I got a couple outdoor magazines and they're big on advertising dip. and I almost just stopped reading the magazine because of it. But it's appealing to a specific group of people.
That's really interesting that you said the magazine thing. I put down some things that were delivering data to me that I could avoid. And we were down at the cabin this weekend, and Dad was asking me, he said he's getting a couple of magazines, and would I mind if he canceled them? And I don't mind, and I have pretty much stopped reading magazines, hunting magazines. We used to get like a pile of hunting magazines in this household, and I've stopped looking at them. And I wonder if I didn't, that makes me wonder if I was not putting that down because of that. If there's not an element of those advertisements in there, because that's one of the things I'm avoiding when I don't watch TV and when I don't do some other things, is I'm avoiding the advertisements on purpose for various things, not just for nicotine. I hadn't thought about the fact that the dip.
Well,
is
I'm
still
sure
being
that's probably playing a part. And think about it. When we were the hardcore users.
Yeah.
Now, opening a magazine and seeing a full page ad for Copenhagen wasn't, oh, hey, great, I'm going to go to the store and buy me a log of Copenhagen now. No, the ads didn't work for me when I was a user. But they sure as hell catch my attention now that I'm not.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? It's kind of like they're not targeting the users. They're trying to get the guys that gave it up.
Yeah.
And I'm not too sure there are too many people that never tried it before that go, oh, I want to look like the Marlboro Man and go buy a pack of Reds, put on my cowboy outfit, and here I go. I don't think it starts like that.
Yeah, no, it is interesting how we decided we were going to begin to do that. I did join I do recall in the magazines I would join those loyalty clubs and that stuff where if you log on here and put your email in there and you can get coupons sent to you. I remember I still have a lot of Marlboro gear. My mother smoked Marlboros from the time she was a little girl, and she played this quit thing, and that's where I first started stealing my cigarettes, was from my mother.
Yep.
And I went out back or went down the road and had a couple cigarettes that I'd taken, and then we were actually sitting across I recall my first cigarette plain as day, leaning against this little pizza joint that was across from the high school, and I remember taking that hit off of it and almost not be able to stand up. I had to sit down on the wall to maintain my equilibrium, and but I never could get that again. Not another time could I get that first cigarette buzz that I got that very first time, as with all of them. But my mom smoked those, and we would get those points, and hell, matter of fact, if we were going to go camping today, the sleeping bag I would grab came from the Marlboro points, and it looks like it looks like a bedroll you'd roll up on the back and put it on your horse. It's got a really tough canvas outer shell and a nice lightweight sleeping bag inside of it. And it's a bedroll. It's a horseback bedroll. Is what it is. Marlboro Man, Central Man. Straight from the Marlboro Man.
Damn.
We had a lot of Marlboro miles too. We had the duffel bag and all that cool stuff you could get. You got your little brochure and you only need 1,000,000 miles.
And we had my mom smoked, man. We had 1,000,000 miles all the time. And actually, Mom didn't do it. Me and Dad was the ones that saved the miles. And we didn't know that Mom. We weren't supposed to know that Mom even smoked, because she would go in the bathroom and open up the window and smoke out the window, thinking we didn't know it.
Yeah, that really helps.
Yeah, I know it. And then she would put all her cigarettes in her cigarette butts and stuff in a Ziploc baggie and put them in a drawer in the pantry kind of area in the bathroom, man. And it stunk like holy hell. And how she didn't know that smelled like that. And you might be coming up to the back of the house, and all of a sudden a big cloud of smoke comes blasting out of the bathroom window. But frankly, that ended up, being one of the contributing factors that, you can't smoke that many years. And she says she started smoking when she was 10 years old. She died when she was 72, and she stopped on and off in those last years a little bit. But she smoked a cigarette the morning that we took her to the hospital to have the neck surgery that ended up resulting in the stroke that ended up taking their life. So she smoked on the last day that she was physically capable of smoking.
Wow.
powerful addiction.
Yeah. Yep. I stopped initially. My first time of stopping was in 2003 when my son was born, when Dustin was born. And I wasn't able to, it didn't take right off the bat, but I was determined to stop smoking. Now, I will know what I did is I just switched. I started dipping instead, or not. I was dipping before, but I just relied solely on dipping, and I stopped smoking. And that was still tough to do, but I was still getting the nicotine hit. I'm still getting the drug, so not near what it did to me when I actually completely put down the drug.
I think my son being born was a big factor in me actually quitting. I don't know if you could say it's a selfish reason or not. I guess you can, because I want to be here when he gets older, and I don't want to set that example for him, to let him think it's okay to do that, because I don't think it is. Addiction or not, I think we're moving towards people, not doing that. I think it's kind of funny with this whole vaping thing taking off now that all this research is coming back saying it's negative as well. Not a safe alternative. People were kind of shifting to do that for the new generation. So hopefully this turns out to be to where people don't have to use anything, or use different things such as healthy things, meditation, things of that nature versus, I need to change the way I feel. Let me smoke something or dip something or whatever.
Yeah, let me get a chemical relaxation going.
Which is what you do through meditation, only it's natural, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I guess you do, yeah.
And it's free. Just takes your time. So
that's another interesting thing is that I happen to know a few people that are in the vaping industry. And as the vaping is taking some hits, you remember when tobacco first started taking the hits? And I really didn't pay attention to it that awful much, but I saw it like, they removed the advertising, and one of the big areas was on the NASCAR racing. Mm-hmm. And at the time I was into it. And so there was no more Camel Joe car and Marlboro car, and they started taking that away from the tobacco industry. And I felt at least some they were really lashing back on that, like, because you're getting into somebody's pocketbook, and that's one of the 5 or 6 like instincts. If you get into I don't care which of the 3 of us, if I go getting into one of your all's pocketbooks, you're gonna get angry. And so somebody gets in your pocketbook, it happens. And my friends who are in the vaping industry I see them do that same kind of panic thing where it starts stepping on their pocketbook here, and and I see a reaction that doesn't look like the guy I know, because the guy I know is a pretty nice and level guy. But man, when you start stepping on that area in their life, man, they're no longer quite the gentle beast.
Now, is he part of the industry and a user? Or?
Yeah.
Yep. There you go.
Yep, both. So yeah, you're getting into something on a personal level, on their own use, and on a pocketbook level. And I try not to be judgmental in that, although I can't help. Frankly, I'm as a sober dude who has quit nicotine also. I cannot help but want others to do the same, because I know that to some extent, there's more to life than you're shortchanging yourself when you're ingesting stuff like that. So I try to stay off my horse though, and try not to, because I know that's not attractive. And if I want somebody to hopefully follow a path that maybe I'm taking, and that is really my goal here, is to, and through the podcast and through the other things that I'm doing with my life, is hopefully to attract others to make similar choices if they want to. Give them kind of like what Tony said. And that same thing in this one. I see somebody else is able to do it. So I see these guys and they have able to quit nicotine. So I go, okay. I walk up to them and go, how did you do that? Right? In a sense, whether we actually do it or not, there is some of that there. Same thing happened to me when I decided that I was, to some extent, the difference with my drug and alcohol abuse and use is that I had my ass on fire, like big time. If I didn't quit, I was going to go to prison. So that's really heavy consequences. Like, it made it actually easier to stop drinking with that consequence. I wasn't going to go to prison if I continued to use nicotine. And I think at some level that made it much harder to quit, because I didn't have my ass wasn't on fire. I didn't have a health scare. I didn't have any kind of thing going on, no kind of legal ramifications when I was deciding that I needed to get off the nicotine. But nonetheless, when I saw some guys, and I did that through a Google search because my mouth hurt and I was quitting dipping and I wanted to know because if I already had cancer or not, I found a group of guys who were successfully quitting nicotine, and I went, hey, if they're doing it, I'm gonna try that. And I hope to be one of them guys. Is that when somebody looks and says, hey, you're off nicotine, I post my day count on multiple sources every day that don't give a shit about my day count.
You know, one of the cool things about that site, I'll bring up the concept of the site. It wasn't that we were getting barraged with, nicotine is bad for you, though you had those people too. And, these guys saying, screw big tobacco, take the money out of their pocket, blah, blah, blah. But what really resounded for me and has continued to now are the stories about how stupid we were. The really disgusting things and the lengths that we went to feed that addiction. You see what I'm saying? Feeling stupid is actually a pretty good motivator.
Yeah, can be.
And I grew up pretty much like Tony, if you remember my story, and that's probably one of the things that caught his attention, was my parents were lifelong smokers. And you could tell them until you're blue in the face, it's going to kill you, it's bad for you. And, well, it had ended up killing them. But it wasn't scary enough, I guess. It wasn't convincing that it was a bad habit just to be told it's not good for you.
Right, because we look over there, man, and we see that going on, and we say, that's not going to happen to me.
Right.
We put those people in a different class, and we are always, one of the things is, I set myself apart from everybody else, and I say, yeah, that might be what's happening to you, but it won't happen to me, and I will be able to quit in time. And if anything ever happens that I start, well, then I will stop. And had all these things set up about how I was different than these other nicotine addicts, and I frankly had the same thing set up around the dope and the booze, is how I was different.
Do you think it's ego?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I used to do that when I would drink and drive. It was always an option to wreck, but that's not going to happen to me. Come on, man. I'm in control.
Yeah, you were a better, more focused driver.
Most definitely.
I take that
drunk.
Yeah, and I watch myself do that same thing today. Like going, I can text and drive. The rest of you, I've rode joints and drove. I can certainly do a little text while I'm rolling down the road. And have you ever heard like the people? I remember people saying they actually did things better under the influence. Mm-hmm. Having myself convinced that I actually, because there was something like, I would tell you that like having a big fat dip in my mouth at work would make me a better worker.
Yeah, more focused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, part of that is true, not from a physiological standpoint, but you convince yourself that, okay, after that first drink, you're more relaxed. So, doing task X requires calm nerves. Okay, fine. You might convince yourself that you're better at it.
Yeah.
The stimulant from nicotine. Okay, you need to be super focused. So you get juiced up on some nicotine, not over the top, but just enough, and then you're good. You're focused. You're hyper. You're knocking out this repetitive task that would have taken you 4 hours. Now you're coming in at 3. Just addiction in general, regardless of the substance.
Yeah, and the flip side of that is once I was addicted, sitting at work not having it was certainly working the other way. If I couldn't have my drug in me, especially after being used to doing it, there was a couple times at work that they started started walking down a path of talking about not allowing you to dip at work anymore. And there quite were a male-dominated field, and there was a good, I don't know if I could really put a percentage on it or whatever, but there was a good 10% or so of 200 people that probably dipped. at their desk on a daily basis.
Wow.
And I'd say I knew 20 guys that probably did, and to take that away, just the rumor of taking that away caused a great deal of anxiety for me, let alone actually having to sit there and not be able to do it. And I'd have cheated every way from Sunday too. There's no way I was going to they can't tell me what I can do, right? It's not like secondhand dip or something that somebody else is being harmed by my behavior.
I agree. I never, even though I'm never going to use again, well, at least not today, I just don't like somebody coming up with a law like that or a rule.
Yeah, it never has worked.
No, and
Prohibition.
you're going to have the cheaters, and you're going to have the
Drugs.
well, none of it makes sense.
I mean, making something illegal and telling you can't do it never has been an effective deterrent ever.
Yeah, how about that murder
The murder law?
laws against the murder rule? We're not supposed to do that.
Yeah, doesn't seem to be slowing it down any. So, also, as I've known Tony, Tony and I's sobriety dates are the same month, so we celebrate together every year. You will hit 3 this coming January if you make it.
Yeah, if I don't know, I'm white and knuckling it. So I'm just joking.
To watch guys, Tony's been another one of these really a cool story of watching a guy transform. When Tony first come around, I didn't even know he had a voice. He might have been mute. And I'm not kidding. You just really never heard anything out of him. When you tried to engage him, he was tough to engage on a personal level, just face to face. Just didn't want to talk. And I totally get that. I understand it completely. But the transformation that's happened over the past few years of where he's been going, and this latest thing just tickled me pink that I do bang this drum of saying to continue to improve the quality of your life in recovery by adding cool things to your life, and sometimes that means by taking away cool things. So I would say the add, actually, I try not to make it a negative thing where it's putting something down. I like the better way of that. I've added quit to my life. That's something I've added to the quality of my life, and there's a momentum building mechanism in us as we start taking steps to be a better version of us today than we were yesterday, and not doing that in a comparative manner of where we're looking at other people and did they do this. Yes, I might look at somebody and see something that I like and that I admire, and I want that in my life too, but I'm not doing it under a comparative nature where I am less than or better than because of. So to watch Tony continue to walk his path where he's now has achieved this milestone of 100 days nicotine free. I know that he's also doing a few other things in his life to the AA book would say it talks about it says if you are painstaking, or no, it says let's see, in the next phase of your development. Where's that line at? Can't remember. It doesn't matter. But it's this phases of development as we continue to walk down these paths of being better versions of ourselves day by day. There's a few other things that you're doing, and I know them, but I'm gonna let you share them. And if you don't get them right, I'll correct you.
All right. I guess I recently took on a new sponsor, which is actually Dan's sponsor, the author of 12-Step Spiritual Recovery, and I'm going back through the steps using the TSSR book, and I just completed the 3rd step. Last week.
Yeah, man.
And so that's a big milestone, and I definitely it gave me a different viewpoint of kind of my relationship with my higher power and what that actually looks like. So it was definitely deeper than I went into the steps before, and I think that was not a dig on my past teachers, but they haven't had that experience going at this different angle. So I'm definitely grateful to have that opportunity, and I just started the 4 step, so I'm really looking forward to the step work kind of picking up and progressing, and I'm looking forward to diving into things that I didn't either recognize as issues before, or they were there and they just weren't ready to be revealed. So I'm excited about that.
Isn't it interesting too that that decision in your life to seek a new teacher, which is something in our circles we promote, not a, some people look at it as like a dig on your old sponsor or some kind of like abandonment thing, and that is not what we do in our circles. We promote people to like cross-pollinate. And can you hear Dad's phone ringing upstairs, Jim?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah, he's got an old style telephone. If it rings like a real, well, it might be the one. It's the one that's actually in the basement. The one that's an old style. It's got a spiral cord on it. It's yellow.
Oh, I love it.
And it's a wall mounted telephone, just like the old days. Now I think it actually. I don't know if it's it may be a rotary. I'll have to go down and look at it in a minute. But certainly has he lives upstairs, but that phone is hooked up upstairs and downstairs, so he can hear it if he spends a lot of time down in the basement working, and so that's down there ringing. Anyway, back to the things that how you were deciding to make this at the same time that you're walking down this, getting the nicotine out of your body and out of your system, and making that a lifestyle change that you putting down. At the same time, you decided a new teacher will be something you want to look at. And I noticed that you've actually done that a number of times in a short amount of time. You've had a few sponsors where you keep on seeking, and that's a cool thing. And I'm not take that as any kind of negative at all. I look at that as going, hey, okay, I'm going to try this guy. And although yes, I'm sure you can agree that every time that you've gained, you've learned some new, you grew off of every experience. You continue to grab for another one, and I think this in here is going to really be a big change in your life when it's working through this TSS, because that's one thing you haven't done is done these steps through the TSSR methodology.
Right. This is the first time through TSSR.
Yeah. Well, see, when Christopher first took me through the steps, TSSR was not really even a thing, but I still received the methodology. It was up in his head, and he was drafting the book. Now we actually have a book to actually go by, so the methodology is available to more people through that rather than just tribal knowledge is what it was when I received it. You've gotten a promotion at work lately?
I did.
Or I switched jobs, which is a career promotion, more accurately stated, I believe.
Yeah, definitely. For about 2.5 years, it seems like I was looking for something more, not just in my spiritual growth of things, but in my career growth of things. And I've been trying to make my way up from a designer into like more of a project lead or project manager or project engineer, whatever label you want to put on it. Just progress my career in that manner, and I've expressed that to my former employer. And they were all about it, at least on the surface. And we'll do that. We can do that. We'll set you up. We'll get you right. And it never happened. It was just kind of empty promises in my mind. And I was carrying a lot of weight for them. And I realized my value to that company. And I've been looking for something better ever since this ball wasn't moving. And finally, not on my time, but finally something broke, and I was able to make a transition to a new company. And actually it's Monday, and if I was working for the old company, I'd be at work right now because they don't have this as a holiday, but my new company does. So I'm actually getting paid to sit here and do a Nicotine Quit podcast. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I will throw in just one more observation. That isn't it interesting that while you decided to take nicotine out of your life, and also, which may or may not have been related to a new teacher in your life, that at the same time you've also have a new career and a new employer in your life at the same time. Isn't it interesting that those things have intersected at the same time?
Big changes. Also, we had a property for sale for like a year that seems like it would never have sold, and within the past month it's gonna sell, so we're just waiting on the clear to close and to sign the paper and me to get a check. So all this stuff that I didn't have any control over really it just started to happen. Rocketed into the fourth dimension, I'd say.
And it just so happens, most of those are the big kind of trigger points too, or trigger issues for the high stress living.
Most definitely, I've noticed that. It's a lot coming in all at once, but luckily I've been able to handle it. Rely on my sponsor, share when I need to, and let that shit out, and just one day at a time.
So that's exactly the momentum building kind of thing I was speaking of earlier about how, and I was meaning that was almost all on purpose, because I get to stand over here as an observer and see things happening in people's lives and look at them. My sponsors taught me to look at these things from a different angle, and so I don't believe that all that stuff happening at this point in time is coincidental. I believe that's that momentum building thing of when you start taking some responsibility and participating in your own recovery at many levels, like you have done, and like I will kind of wonder, did this stuff begin with that decision, that decision to stop the nicotine? Because that seems like the older one. I know you had some of these other things in play, but they weren't materializing until the decision to put down the nicotine was actually made and started to be executed in a nature true to your heart. Did these other things materialize? And I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's in that kind of time frame that these things have happened, because it's all happened pretty quickly. A lot of things have fell down the pipe and started, the what would you might say, the ducks all started lining up in a row.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Following behind a decision to stop nicotine.
That's kind of
part
funny.
of the larger plan.
Point that out, because it really was the first move in this new journey for me. Well, just something to add too was the nicotine quit, and then like dominoes, I guess everything just kind of fell into place, and I guess one of the biggest blessings I've realized for just going through this TSSR thing for the first time is ability to get my voice back and to be able to be more authentic and be able to share from a deeper level than I was before. So that's something I've realized just in the short amount of time that I've been working the steps thus far. So I think it's something that has me more excited about continuing the journey forward.
Yeah, because for a long time we didn't hear from you, and nowadays, it's particularly in TSSR, you share more times than not in the meetings. So we're hearing you, and I like that, finding your voice. When that podcast a few weeks ago that Christopher and I did together, he asked me what I thought the biggest miracle was, or the biggest shift in my being was as a result of this work I've been doing, and my answer was that I found my voice.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, that part of that is like the fact that this podcast is recording my voice and broadcasting it on a regular basis. But that finding my voice is bigger than just the noise that I'm making, right?
Oh yeah.
It's getting closer to finding what Christopher's book says, reclaiming our true self, our true soul. Finding, actually getting back to that where I feel comfortable in my own skin, and that I feel like I have a purpose. And when I'm sitting somewhere doing something, I feel like I'm right here doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right at this moment, just like I do right now. And that's not a feeling I used to ever achieve. No. The only way that I thought I was achieving that was by putting chemicals into my body in the past. That was the only time that I could get that feeling that I was where I was supposed to be doing what I was supposed to be doing. And today I get it on a regular basis by doing things like this, recording these podcasts and sharing these stories of people making, of improving their lives day by day, one day at a time, and sponsoring people and contributing to the TSSR movement and doing these things. I feel like I'm home.
Yeah. The ability to be present is definitely a gift of sobriety, because I was always either in the past or in the future.
Yeah.
And I was always looking for something. And I think that brief moment before I ingested something into my body, I had that glimpse of being present. And then other than that, it was either, in the past or in the future. I always had something to do or somewhere to be. I was never where I should be.
Yep, that's the exact same. You just said what I said in different words. That's another thing that's cool, that sometimes these things can be expressed in so many different ways, and they ultimately have the same thing. So that's kind of like, that's being comfortable in my own skin is being okay right here, right now, without any help.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
And thinking about the past, in terms of you finding your voice, Tony. I mean, think about it. 2 years ago, when you were a member of the original Fury, you weren't really a participant. I mean, you were there, you were posting, but posting your role, I guess you were kind of more of a post and ghoster, but yeah, would you agree? I'm not saying that is an insult, but
No, yeah, most definitely. I think my issue with that group was I didn't have any fucking idea how to post row. Like, it was so fucking complicated, and I just was like, I got fed up, and I just was like, fuck it, you know.
This is not worth it. Every day I post roll, I want a big dip in my lip.
Yeah, and then they're like, you're doing it wrong, and then they're like, this is how you do it. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like I showed up, and I tried it. Is that not good enough? Like. That was kind of my feeling from it, is I couldn't figure out how to post row, so it made it really hard for me. It was hard enough to get in and do it, and then to get that feedback like, yeah, you're fucking doing it wrong, it was a turnoff for me.
Yeah, wasn't it though?
Yeah, and I can't bash it too much because, you know, I got closer to Dan, I think, from being in the group, and I got to know you a little bit, like. I got to know of you a little bit, not really develop a relationship, but I knew where you guys came from, so we got that in common to a degree.
Yeah, right. And then to hear 100 days down the road from when you made the decision, you know, we have come full circle, and here we're all having this conversation. So
yeah, and you are active in our group.
Yep.
So that was the direction I was going with it. So. I think you have made a noticeable change, and you are participating, and that's why you're being successful.
Yep.
Honestly, well, that's at least what I believe.
Bingo, man. This stuff does not happen unless you participate in your own deal here. You just don't. Hell, I can't get fat unless I participate in eating. I'm not going to get, nothing is going to happen to me until I actually take some action behind it. And that, you're right, Jim. His participation in all aspects, really, to some extent, but specifically where we're at today here, and his participation in being active in his quit is on a grand scale compared to like it was a few years ago. And you just knew, we just knew certain people just weren't into it. Now, some of those people that were really that way, I still am in contact with, and they're still quit. So,
it can be done.
Yeah, but
I don't think it's the ideal way.
No, I don't either. And but it's interesting that that many of those people that I'm still in contact with. I don't know if they're still posting over there or not. I've quit asking them, so they may be still doing it. And ultimately, you did that PQA on our daily promise, and that's kind of that is the root, I think, is getting up every morning, similar to what we do in recovery when we ask our higher power to help us stay sober today and guide us today, is that when I wake up in the morning and I send my day count out to all you guys and post it in various places, I'm making an accountability of myself and stating that, yes, today Dan Reeves is going to stay off nicotine with you guys and gals.
Yeah, I think it's a not just a routine, but it's a religious thing for me. Because if I don't see it, I'm going to come looking for it.
Yep.
Because that's part of my promise.
Yep.
When,
exactly.
I post my roll count, and if I see that you're not posting yours, I get concerned.
Yep.
And I come looking.
Yeah, and I try to be proactive if I'm not going to be around for whatever reason. If I'm even worried that I'm going someplace that I don't know what about cell service and what I'm going to be, I try to be proactive so you guys know that I'm not, potentially may not be around this weekend, or rather than just, ghost on you.
Just so you guys know, the Colonel's not bullshitting. So I broke my phone one time.
Yeah.
And so he was tagging me and hollering at Dan, like, hey, where's Tony at? And I think I was around, 50, 60 day mark, something like that. And my phone, literally, the screen was gone, and I had no way of texting anybody or posting in the group me. So he was trying to hunt me down.
Well, there was one night that you asked me, you posted, and you said, or you sent me a text, or you posted in there, and you said, has anybody seen Tony? And I was actually sitting at a TSSR meeting that night with Tony.
I remember your reply. Yeah, he's sitting right next to me.
He's right over there. I think I may even have took a picture of him and posted it. It's like over
I'm not sure if I said what I was really thinking at that point, which was, so why the fuck isn't he posting?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I'll be honest on that account too, man. I dropped the ball a little bit in there too because he did. I think you reach out to me through like Facebook Messenger or something where you did,
Messenger, yeah.
And I probably should have picked up that ball a little better that day rather than just like on a personal note go, okay, Tony, cool, and just took it personal on my one-on-one. I should have actually passed that on through to the pipeline, and I dropped the ball on that.
Well, I hope when I do these things that it's recognized for what it is. You know, I'm not the ball breakers from that other place.
Yeah,
I'm doing it because your success and and the thought of somebody's failure affects me directly too.
totally get it, man. Totally, I know where your heart is and all that exactly.
Yeah.
And
You know,
since
it's
you
another funny
were
thing
one of the
I-
original members of the Fury, Tony, of course, I gotta look out for you.
I appreciate that.
You were saying, Dan? I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
No, you just actually think, this whole brotherhood and accountability aspect of this whole thing, I take it seriously, and we've had a guy friend cave just not long ago, and I know I probably, I don't know what, I'm just going to say it. I probably shouldn't feel this way. I should just be okay with it because one of the other things that I look at is like, ultimately addiction is a mental disease.
Mm-hmm.
And when you cave or relapse or whatever, you're actually exhibiting symptoms of the disease you have. So when your cancer comes back, I don't call you an asshole and get hurt about that. But when you relapse on the substance, then I get my feelings hurt a little bit, like you've like our friendship and this accountability promise, because that's what I feel like I've got with you guys, man. The old super duper pinky promise with you all, we're going to do this together. And when you don't hold your end of the deal up, I'm a little hurt. And I got a little hurt over our friend who has went back to using nicotine, and it's an interesting dynamic how I feel like it's healthy for me, and I don't feel bad about the fact that I do that, but there's something in me that feels like I shouldn't be bothered when other people cave, but I am. Or relapse. I am bothered by it. I think some of it's fear because if that person can do it, if that person can cave, and I can too, and that scares me a little. And I know I can. It's not that I don't know it, but when I see it in my face, then I actually more than know it. I feel it. Then I go, damn, man, there goes another one. And on a weekly basis in the recovery world, man, I know somebody dies. I picked it up again today, the phone, and looked on Facebook and saw another person I knew passed away over the weekend from an overdose. So it is a regular thing that happens, and going back to our substances is the thing there, and that's it eventually get us. So I was thinking about the accountability thing, and as I was going down that path, how can you? And this is one of the reasons why there's the 11th tradition in AA about. Not being not outing yourself, the anonymity portion is kind of part of this reason right here, is that when you've come on here and you've told your nicotine quit story on the podcast, I think it adds a level of accountability that's like, now this is out there and I have a little bit bigger consequences to not caving today.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because my story's laid out there, man. Especially like just for you, Jim, because I know this is probably, I keep on wanting to do these qualifiers in this. There's a lot of people that love to see Jim, the Colonel, cave.
Hell yeah.
And now you're out there on the internet and your story's out there and
my damn PQAs.
Yeah, right. Yeah, your PQAs is all out there, man. Yeah, that stuff will solidify your quit.
It better, because if I ever caved, Dan, life is over.
Yeah, they would. There would be yes. They would.
What about complacency, Jim? What about that?
Right.
That whole promise is everything, Jim. Oh my God. Greetings, folks. This is the Colonel. You may remember me from episode 126 about nicotine recovery. Well, I'm here with this week's public quit announcement for those of you wishing to add nicotine to your recovery roster. This PQA is brought to you by DTM Enterprises and the band Councilman. I named today's PQA Complacency is the Enemy of Recovery, and here's why. Of the many times that I have attempted to quit nicotine, where I failed on each occasion was when I had myself convinced that I had a good handle on my recovery, when I thought I no longer had to work so hard at maintaining my quit. This is all stupid addict talk, of course. Folks, let me tell you, I'm not the only one who has experienced this. I've watched dozens of fellow quitters fall prey to this same thing. They start to drift away from their methods of accountability, no longer being a daily contributor to their groups or members. Their quit plans left by the wayside, sometimes ghosting for days until the inevitable final disappearance. Sometimes this is preceded by an exit speech expressing a solid conviction that they do not need all the drama and harassment associated with the recovery program. They go on to claim that they have a great handle on their recovery and we should no longer worry about them. Well, if we all had that kind of control over our addictions, then we would never be at the point where it became absolutely imperative that we enter recovery. It's just another common addiction myth that many of you have likely heard many times over, and chances are that these tragic words have crossed your own lips at some point. Well, my friends, this has been our PQA for the week. Take it from Dan and I. It all gets better, and you only need to worry about staying quit today, one day at a time. Quit on and carry on, my friends. Colonel No Cope out.
Jill, that is, but so on the flip side of that, what this is exactly is the same thing that the drum that I beat is that you must participate in your recovery and your quit, et cetera, et cetera. And by participating in your quit at the level that you are, that ensures or adds insurance to the policy that you won't cave.
Agreed. You got to put up or shut up, basically.
Yeah, I know that, I feel that a lot. Not that I'm nowhere near it. I'm going to make sure that this doesn't sound like I'm being, that mean we're near any kind of cave or a relapse or anything like that, because I feel as solid as I've ever felt in my entire life. But, I went down to the cabin over the weekend and I looked at back there, man, and my dad's in the car with me, so that gives me a safety deal, but like being alone is not probably the best thing in the world for me ever, and especially like if I'm gonna go spend a considerable time down at the cabin, that kind of dip and nobody will know kind of thing slips into my mind. But I'm sitting here doing all this podcasting and talking about it and beating the drum on nicotine cessation and staying clean and sober and all the things that I'm doing today for myself. And that it puts some insurance on there. It's like similar to when I was early on and I was on that home incarceration and I had a breathalyzer in my house. There were a few times that breathalyzer coming off. That's where my story, because they say think it through before you take an action. Thinking through what was going to happen thought me through to coming home and having that alarm go off and call for me to blow in it was what stopped me from grabbing that 6-pack on the way home from work that day. Was going, yeah, man, you really can't, you're not going to get away with it this time. You're not. You're going to go home and that thing is going to come blow your whistle. And so sometimes I wonder if back in the back of my head, this podcast doesn't allow me the same type of accountability in my head that I go, you know what, dude? No, you can't. And another thing is I got a lot of people, you sponsor people and you get them dependent on, they're not really dependent on you, but they sort of are. And damn, what if your sponsor, it happens, but your sponsor relapses. So there's a lot of accountability angles that participating in my own recovery keeps my insurance policy paid up. Tony's following my crystals. I got two, I don't know, what are they, 4-inch? 4 or 5 inch spheres. Yeah. One of them is Labradorite, and one of them is fluorite. I got them from a gal. I use them on the podcast table. You've seen them in pictures probably.
Yeah, I usually come over and they're set up, and now they're in a box because they moved. It was the last minute, so I'm getting them out and setting them up. Yeah,
I need if I'm gonna do remote podcast from the wood shop, I'm probably gonna need to do something, or maybe I should just try it. I get some Wi-Fi out there. It's just I don't want a mishap, and in the house I won't have one. So it's, again, insurance policy paid up on that the podcast doesn't have a big blip in the middle of it, because I can watch and we haven't had a single blip. Well, cool. So I think it's time that we go around the table and give concluding thoughts. And and call this one a wrap and move on. Ooh, man, just as soon as I said that, my screensaver come on for the first time in 82 minutes.
Nice. Already 82 minutes?
Yeah, it went blank. So, Jim, you want to go first on the concluding thoughts and anything you want to say to the Tony, to me, to the universe, to anybody out there looking to quit nicotine?
The biggest thing that I want taken away from today's podcast is that yet again, here's another example of how this can work, how somebody can make it work, how they've changed, made positive change, and that participation in their recovery yields the strongest results. I'm really proud of you, Tony, and I don't mean that in a holier than thou way, but your successes are mine. And when you came back in, and I'm like, that name, that looks familiar, and Dan told me who you were, I was just like, yes, I'm looking forward to this. I want to hear this story. Now, granted, your avatar was scary looking.
I'll change it.
You did, but I mean, with those red mutton chops, you freaked me out. I was like, holy cow, this guy's meaner than me. But watching you get this far and going through the milestones, you mentioned the rage more times in your posts, and I thought that was good. You were recognizing those triggers and the steps that we go through. Now, what I want to say is, and you already know this, because you probably read Kyle's mention about the very next challenge, and that's in the 120s to 130s.
Yeah.
It hit that for Kyle. It was similar for me. I think what that comes from is all the excitement of the 100 days is over, and it kind of opens up this door for the Nick bitch to start whispering in your ear again, and throw some more cravings at you that you may or may not be prepared for. So I just want you to hunker down, know that it's coming. It doesn't have to, and if it doesn't, I'm happy. But knowing that it can, knowing is half the battle. That was the old G.I. Joe cartoon thing, right? Knowing is half the battle?
Yeah.
Okay, something along those lines. But as an Army guy, I was kind of honor bound to bring that up.
All right.
So anyway, Tony, congratulations. I just want to see, I want to continue to see great things from you, and we'll always be there for you.
Well, thanks, Jim. I appreciate that.
You betcha.
Tony.
All right. I guess I'm glad I made it to 100 days. I'm glad I got into a group of people that make me accountable. So I think if I continue to do this thing, and I take the suggestions that people have for me, and I openly share, and I'm vulnerable, then I can stay quit one day at a time. And I think really anybody can do this. You know, you got to make a decision, get into a group, and be accountable. Allow people to help you, and just do the next right thing. And I think by doing that, I've been able to make 100 days and hopefully continue to stay quit, like I said before, one day at a time.
Amen.
Yeah. Well, cool, fellas.
And thanks, Dan. Thanks for the opportunity to do this.
Well, you're very welcome, brother.
And both through the 12 steps of AA, through TSSR, and through this nicotine. Because I think using the podcast and getting it out there is another tool we can utilize, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I'm having a blast doing it for sure. Well, thank you, man. And what happens here is, at least from my perspective, what happens to me is I gain like these true brothers in this deal where we walk this thing called life together. and I've just been blessed beyond belief that I get to have so many brothers like you and like Jim. And we continue to grow closer. And like I said in the beginning, you were pretty well closed off to allowing new in to some extent. I mean, you wanted it, but there was a block there.
Yeah.
And I've watched you, and you talked the other night about a spirit animal thing, which I'll share for just a second. And you just talked about that you came into this spirit animal of a turtle. And you talked about some things, and I don't actually remember exactly what you said about it, but what I saw and heard when the turtle analogy was brought about was a guy that's coming out of his shell. That's what I heard, and that's what I see as you continue to do this stuff. I get to know your family. I've met your son. We begin to actually know each other rather than just bump into each other in meetings. You come to the retreats. You've sat down at a number of podcasts, and you've told your own alcohol and drug story here for the podcast, which I really appreciate you've done that. And I love that, see what you're doing, and I love you, man. It's a fun thing to do this thing hand in hand, arm in arm, and walk this, because this is something I didn't have. The whole time I was looking for something, and I didn't know what it was, and frankly, this is what it was. It was this brotherhood and this connection with guys like you two. That's what I was fucking looking for the whole time. That's why I sat down with a beer in my hand. That's why I started using nicotine. It was an attempt to connect with brothers, but that all fell short and come back like Bill says is the boomerang, and come back and hit me in the back of the head. And today I have a whole new way about going about joining arm in arms with brothers and doing this walk in a way that just brings me a lot of satisfaction. So, thanks for being another lantern in the light of nicotine cessation amongst many recovered souls who haven't taken that step. As we do that and we make that known, they also begin to become inquisitive about can they also do the same thing. So I'm sure our numbers will increase as you become one of us too. We do this little thing where we say in TSSR, instead of identifying as an alcoholic or an addict, or we don't identify in there, and what I've started saying is I am one too. Whatever you are, I am one too. So yeah, becoming one too. Thank you all out there for listening. Thanks, Jim, for coming in and being my co-host here today. I really enjoyed doing this with you, and thanks for the PQAs too, and what you're doing to participate in your recovery on this whole nicotine cessation front. Like I said, I don't know too many guys that really know much more about nicotine quitting than you do. Thanks. I don't know anybody that does. You've obviously been from day one, you and I somehow or another in some weird way connected, and in a lot of ways it shouldn't have happened, but it did, and here we are getting at 2 years of quit, and still on, we still have a daily connection with one another. Hell, a lot of my closest friends, there's not too many people I have a daily connection with.
I hear you.
So thank you for participating in the podcast and helping me down this path. We'll go ahead and hit these commercials. DTMWW.net, woodworking and handyman here in the metro Louisville area. 12-step spiritual recovery at Amazon. Many ways to buy that book, and we're having meetings around town. There's a Facebook page, there's a web page. You contact me if you're interested in bringing your 12-step program to the next level, and or you're not an alcoholic addict and you just want some new tools to employ in finding some little bit of some better in your life.
Some juice in your life, no doubt. And today's music is brought to you by the Colonel's Legal Defense Fund, TCIASP.net. That's an old joke we might bring and tell you about someday. And so, out there in the world, if you're not having a blast, if you're not having fun in your own recovery, in your own life here, it's your own damn fault. It's available to you. Thank you all for allowing me to participate in my recovery, my overall spiritual recovery from tip to toe in this manner today. Peace out.